We live? Yeah.
This film, it's really a character piece when you look at it, and a thriller.
Time is of the essence. Every second is a second not to lose. That is just a great thing to get to play the whole time.
Shut those doors!
But its tone is challenging, you know, there's humor in the film.
I think we should be in good shape, so holy shit, that guy has a gun.
Imagine my surprise.
There's cynicism of looking at our social, political world today.
I'm telling you, it's rigged.
It's a little like those 70s folk hero films.
But this movie is a massive jigsaw puzzle for a director and for all of us technicians making the film.
And action!
It was a 3-camera TV show, coupled with the fact that we're bringing our film cameras as well.
Jodie made the decision she made to tell the story how the story should be told.
Money Monster has two things that people think are opposites. One is that it's a real thriller that is smart and yet still has a real accessibility. But it forces you to learn at the same time about something that's quite complicated.
Where are your quants,
Before our
Diane?
annual
Where are your
reports.
quants? You're the guy who actually designed the algorithm that crashed.
I think it really challenges you to be as smart as you can, to follow the characters.
But this movie is a logistical nightmare in so many different ways. So we did a version of the script where it assembled the chronological scenes that happen out on the stage between Kyle and Lee. So it all happens in real time.
These two men who start out on day one of filming, meeting each other for the first time, and then everything that happens as they change was shot completely in order. That was really good for the actors in some ways because their relationship was able to naturally evolve, but also incredibly difficult for the actors because the bulk of all the dialogue and the speeches and the monologues and all of the things that are said to camera all happen in the course of that stage work.
And so George Clooney said that filming became incredibly difficult because of the sheer number of words.
We were doing 9 pages of full monologues a day. And it's also a bit of a language that I don't understand about algorithms and things that I really don't pay much attention to.
He couldn't even say that word. We had to bring a person in to train him.
Yeah, watch this. I'll just move my lips and you'll hear it.
Algorithm.
You even said it wrong.
That was the joke.
Okay, good.
When I first read the script, I loved this sort of hybrid of the satirical element.
Will this work, boss?
This is stuff there. I said I wanted a live pigeon. Patty, goddammit.
We don't have a live pigeon.
And then you have this thriller contained element. I hadn't really seen that combination before.
She really wanted to make a film that felt like in the world of like Lumet, you know, something, that kind of tension.
Something that had a social relevance about it in talking about the financial world.
I think it's a story about all of us feeling in control or not in control of our own lives. It's people who are brought to their tipping point, and then what happens? I think that's great conversation after a movie.
Set. Action.
Northwest Holdings suffered a $4 loss today. That is a 9% drop.
It was always important for Jodie to see the broadcast of the television program and to film it with film cameras, but also with broadcast cameras.
And when you have a television show that you're shooting, you know that you have to be shooting it with multiple perspectives. So you know that each of these cameras at any given moment you could be cutting to. So the whole thing has a live television aspect to it.
And the jigsaw puzzle of what is the television world and what is the film world, that was the most difficult part of the film.
If there's a TV monitor, well, is he going to look in the camera here? Is it from the television? Are we in the studio watching the story? Whose point of view is it and how are we telling it?
All of those decisions are those big headache preparation decisions that we made ahead of time that really helped us really understand what the movie was about.
And then the editing process became, it's kind of like a menu system now of, okay, well, you can be on any one of, 6 different positions you want to be in.
Sometimes we want to see how it's affecting them on the set and on the stage, and then immediately we want to see how they serve that up to the camera. There's a lot of things to play with.
And after a while, suddenly it became intuitive. What we realized was that the film camera gives you emotion, a kind of emotion that you can't get any other way. But the broadcast camera gives you other people's perspective.
I think it's interesting in a film like this to be able to have both perspectives, and I think there's a commentary in that, which was a really fun thing, I think, for Jodie to play with and for us to watch unfold.
Lee,
I'm locking up the stage.
you have to keep stalling, so just keep talking.
The first half of the shoot, we were on the stage focused just on the television show. It wasn't until after that that we went and did the control room where Julia was, and then had all of the footage already being worked into the playback at that point so she could act across from playback of the video.
It was always important to make the control room feel as though it was right next door to the studio. So her world will be presented to the audience as something that is just lit up with all these different images that she's directing and sort of organizing.
We shot all her stuff in, a week, and all that stuff is, it's make-believe. And the same for George, he's doing the same thing. And when it gets really tense,
Fucking say another word about my son. I'll end this right fucking now, you hear me?
maybe they're hearing each other, and that's not the same thing, but they're great actors.
On the shoot, George and Julia were virtually never 2 days where they were actually in the same room.
It's been very strange and probably an ingenious design by Jodie Foster to keep George and I separated, because we were together the first day and then we've been separated ever since.
The good news is it's George Clooney and Julia Roberts who know each other, who care for one another, and have this instant, interesting chemistry.
When am I getting the revisions for the opening?
We're still making some changes on it. Anybody seen Ron?
Might I get those before the show or after the show?
Julia, just point the camera in my direction. We'll figure it out together.
It always sounds so simple and yet so moronic.
Sometimes when you've had success on screen, you don't have to work quite as hard to establish it. When she gives me a hard time, people sort of enjoy that because they kind of figure she probably does give me a hard time in real life. I haven't eaten dinner alone since the 90s, it's hand to God.
Well, that's just awful. That just makes me feel sorry for you.
So the two of them felt incredibly close to each other, and yet they were never in the same room.
Diane Lester is going to come on the show a little bit later, and she's going to explain to us what happened last week, and more importantly, what they're going to do to fix it. But first, let's talk market movers and shakers.
Cut. I've worked with a bunch of directors in my career, and Jodie is incredibly specific, and she's able to keep all of these different strands and threads alive in her head and tracking everything as deliberately and intelligently as possible, and it's pretty impressive to watch.
There's certain technicalities that we just have to abide by if the film's going to be seamlessly shot. She strikes a balance with all of that. It doesn't seem like one conflicts the other.
She sees things not just from an omniscient directorial standpoint, she sees things from an actor standpoint and from a character standpoint. She comes at things from a character perspective.
We see you, then you go black, and then we pan up and we see the rest of his line. It's all very complicated.
Okay, cool.
So I just want to make sure that it's exactly in that spot.
Okay.
Most actors who become directors, their focus in general is on performance. I mean, that's a very good thing if you're an actor in the movie with them, because the very first thing that you'll be sort of protected with is performance.
I can't catch my breath.
Listen to me. I'm going to talk you through this, okay? I'm just completely taken with her as an actor and as a director, as a person, but I do find myself thinking Jodie Foster is talking to me right now. Which is really the wrong way to go about it, I think.
Hey, Floresca, can I have the...
I'm an actor, and I love people. That's the most exciting part of making movies, is how people interact, and everything else is there to support that. Every bell and whistle, every green screen, every fancy crane, all of it is in service to the moment between people. When you have that, and when you have actors that work well together, and when you have a script that really feels in some ways like a great play, it feels like a living, breathing thing. And maybe it's not perfect, but it's a living, breathing thing. And for that, I'm proud of that.
And cut!
30 seconds to air.
Lee, follow the noise. Okay, here we go. Good luck, everybody.
Here he is, the Wizard of Wall Street himself.
The name is Lee Gates. Without risk, there is no reward. Ibis Clear Capital. Folks, there isn't a better bet out there. Not bonds, not IRAs.
What can I tell you? I'm in love.
Thank you very much. My name is Lee Gates. The show is Money Monster.
Money Monster, the show, is pretty ridiculous. I mean, it's a financial news show, but there's lots of props and old movie clips and lots of bells and whistles so that he can sell you products, and those products are financial products.
I know you're wondering, should I sell? Should I unload? Well, you know what I'm going to say to you.
Roll balls.
Roll some balls, man. Man up.
There's a cynicism that sort of just reeks through all of these shows. When you watch the guys sitting behind desks telling you where to put your money, and when you do it and you lose it, they go, well, that's what happens.
If you bought Ibis stock, you got kicked in the nuts. So quit whining, get up off the mat, we're gonna get back in the ring, and we're gonna start swinging again.
We love the idea of the world of money and how it's gotten out of control. We love the idea of when things go wrong, you actually don't really understand what it is that went wrong and how the little guy can get screwed. And I thought those were really interesting themes.
You went on TV, you said it was safe, and it was a computer glitch.
A glitch! A glitch! What the hell does that even mean? You see, you don't even know. I'm not stupid, Lee, I told you.
The character really sort of came into focus when George signed on. And he had a lot of opinions about what kind of person he wanted to play, and really strengthening the arc, and he encouraged us to go as far as we were comfortable going.
And, you know, he's played so many different characters, but I think he'd never really tackled anything quite like this.
Let's talk market movers and shakers.
I do not envy George with the talking really fast, and he's got all these props and alarms are going off. He's gonna call a triple.
Let's go all the way, whole hog, and make it a rare
triple dive.
Backgrounds are changing, graphics are being laid down. It was a sort of brilliant dance between him, the camera people, the graphics people, the video people.
Just because we cut almost I was letting him walk out of my shot. Out of the shot, yeah.
He really has to inhabit somebody who has a very particular skill set, and he has to have a personality, a persona that is familiar enough that if we don't know him, we know exactly who that guy's supposed to be.
And on the first day of shooting, George's idea was, I think you should come in with a dance. So we really worked that into the script.
I mean, there wasn't really that much choreography. I just said, you know, let's go. And the girls are these sort of great dancers, and I just said, I'm going to do some really dumb dances, and you follow. And they were like, okay, this is going to be really terrible, and it was.
I know he thinks he looks like a jackass, and I'm not saying he doesn't, but he's quite a good dancer.
To see him do that ridiculous dance was fantastic.
CDE comment marker.
It's interesting because Lee's character, he's been at this long enough. He's lost touch with his own responsibility. I think he's kind of just out there doing his shtick at this point.
You know, Lee has to face that he's been unconscious and that he's been kind of lost in a sleep. And when he sees this Kyle, he sees that in some ways this guy's a mirror of himself.
By the end, he finds his heart and finds a connection to somebody that he never thought he would.
He realizes that, you know, he was just a mouthpiece for them, and they would tell him whatever they wanted him to say. You know, he woke up one day and realized he was the guy that was getting laughed at, and I think finally that didn't register very well.
From moment one when we got the script 6 years ago, you know, in our minds, if we were lucky enough, it was always going to be George Clooney playing Lee Gates, so that was never anybody else.
George lives in that world where he represents so much to so many people, and he does know the power of that.
George has the charisma, he can grab an audience, and I think that that was really important for the character.
If you read the script, he takes exactly what's on the page and brings it to life in a way that it's just fun to watch.
I'm having fun. Working with George too, he looks like he's having fun, I dare say. I felt certainly encouraged by his generosity as an actor. He's always there for you.
I've been a huge fan of his work, both as an actor and a director, and I have a huge amount of respect for him. He's been fantastic, and it's amazing working with him.
Lee Gates is kind of a metaphor in some ways for what it feels like to be an actor. There's part of you that's the showman, and part of you that knows how to manipulate and understands the power of media.
I want you to ask yourself, what is a life worth to you? What's my life worth?
I think that George was really able to bring the nuance of that. He's a movie star who quietly is unafraid to look at the darker sides of himself.
Our whole mantra for the last 20 years has been make the films you want to see. And this was one I'd like to see.
I think through the course of the film, I think we're expecting that Kyle will receive justice, and that he'll get that justice in the end.
Background action, and action.
And what happens is sort of usually everything gets sort of rounded off at the end into really nice, happy, somehow endings. But I like endings that they're not insane for the sake of being insane. They're insane because it actually is reality and life and works. You came here to get some answers. You deserve to get some answers.
But you don't just come in with a gun and a bomb and threaten people. That's just not something you do.
For
For Kyle, this is sort of his last gasp, and he's doing it so that somebody else can share his frustrations and his sympathies. And the fact that it becomes Lee through the machinations of the story, I think surprises even him.
Whatever you do, don't take your finger off the goddamn trigger. We're in this together now.
Suddenly they both become protagonists that you're rooting for. This is where that brotherhood forms, to go find the guy that should be held ultimately accountable for the whole thing.
Background and action.
Once we got outside, we have streets of Wall Street, we have policemen, we have ESU guys, we have helicopters. So it was something that's quite complicated.
It's totally crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in charge of producing that part of the movie.
When we left the studio, we wanted to go into the world of the financial district through blocks of these buildings that were stone and neoclassic, and then we culminate in that neighborhood in Federal Hall to sort of metaphorically create this feeling that they were going back in time in a way and away from the technology of the Money Monster studio.
Finding a location for the scene, there were some particular requirements. You needed a space that was not just open, but that could be dynamic, and you could have multiple angles.
And this whole scene is being shot over 4 weekends. So we really had to plan out what equipment, what crew, when we could get in here. We have cranes out here, we have multiple cameras out here, so there was a lot of logistics involved.
I do think that we wanted to have the set contribute the changes and the arcs within those two characters so that people could focus more on that. That was intentional from the beginning.
When we first had our first conversation with Jodie, she always said, I want to make sure we keep this thrilling and fast-paced and commercial, but we get to also play with these characters and their brotherhood.
It's a great perspective to witness what unfolds in the story. I guess that kind of matches what we're hoping would be the reality of the scenario.
Okay, we're here with IBIS CEO Walt Canby. This is a Money Monster exclusive. So, Walt, now that we have you here in person, we can finally ask $1 billion question. What happened?
And look, at the end of the movie, he's going to take this guy down and tell him right there, right in front of the whole world, what exactly he did wrong. They figured out the entire scheme this guy was up to.
And Patty, she's really, in some ways, the most heroic figure throughout the course of the movie because she really does what the police aren't able to do. She manages to keep him surviving and also manages to get to the heart of the mystery of what's happening in the real world.
This was an isolated computer glitch.
Cue up video 1. Now line the rest of them up on my mark.
Look, I'll give you this. There really was a glitch in your system. It just wasn't the computer.
Go.
It was this guy.
She's the angel in his ear. She's, in some ways, his moral compass. Once she starts asking those questions, too, it's a lot easier for him to go along with it.
And what ends up happening, because she really cares about him, she ends up really producing his survival.
We're making some pretty big leaps here, and we don't have a lot of proof. So if Walt Canby is going to hang himself, you're going to have to hand him that rope.
Action.
You're a thief, a crook, and I want to hear you admit it.
Killing Kyle would have been a really hard decision for me. It was an easy one for Jodie. Kyle didn't die in the original draft that she came onto, and in fact, he became this sort of New York hero, and he was celebrated in the streets afterwards. For Jodie, it was, in a lot of ways, this movie became a sort of morality tale.
As soon as George came on board, I think we had that conversation where we talked over the telephone. I think it was the first conversation that I had with George. And then went very quickly after that, where I said, Kyle's gotta die. And he's like, oh yeah, Kyle's gotta die.
I sort of don't agree with the idea that everything has to be tied up with a bow. Everything has to fit what the story is. And it would seem way off if it were the other way around. If you just said, well,
I feel like a cop-out.
Yeah, it's a cop-out.
So once we made that decision, then, it was very clear. I mean, he's done something wrong.
I suppose, there's an element of stupidity in what he's done here. Let's have that right. Because, I'm sure he'd hate to admit that, but there is.
But he's dying for something. And in the film, he, in some ways, knows that he doesn't have a choice at the end of this movie. His choices are horrible. Every one of his choices are horrible. But he wants his life to mean something.
I want to hear him say that he lied, that what he did was wrong.
What ultimately is the most satisfying for Kyle is all he wanted was something really simple. He wanted somebody to say, I was wrong.
Wrong? What does that even mean, wrong? You got 3 seconds till I blow your ass out of this goddamn.
What's wrong with making a profit? What's wrong with being faster than everybody else? What's wrong with betting big? Winning is fine. was wrong.
That's all I wanted to hear, man. If we're going to portray a reality, we have responsibilities. In my view, me personally, I consider our job a very potentially delicate one, exploring potentially delicate matters anyway. So, therefore, we have a responsibility. And I think it would be wrong to depict Kyle as an all-round hero.
Kyle, don't.
Kyle, don't! No, don't!
All of these people that have learned and changed and have been through so much and have had their hearts open up, but then there's all these people watching, and it's just another day of TV, and it's another day on Wall Street, and the system isn't changing. We have accepted that this is the system, that we view injustice, and we watch the television program end, and then we turn it off, and, we go get a coffee, and that's our responsibility, and, that's the system that we've accepted that we live in.